Ah, how crazy. Are you here? Can you see me and hear me? I am just like, okay, good. I see names. Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, excellent. Okay, thank you so much. I have never tried to like go run around inside of YouTube and find a new place to open a door. And so it's like kind of a miracle that it worked. I'm so glad. So, what we'll do in this instance, so that there's one singular video for a replay, I will take both halves of this and kind of stick them together, I hope. If it's possible, can anyone tell me the last thing you remember me talking about? Because I don't know when it cut off. I had just been yakking away and I don't know when it cut off. I'll wait just a second so that you can so that somebody can fill me in on where we left off so that I can know where we are. You guys are very patient. I have no idea what happened. I saw somebody say that bears were chewing the cards. Thankfully, that was not the case, but I still don't know what was the case because I have really good internet here, so I'm not sure what's going on. Let's see. Can anybody tell me? I'm just waiting. There is a little bit of a lag, so you might not have heard. You might not have had time to even hear and answer the question that I had, but I'm just going to wait. Exploration and adaptation. Let's see. Let's see. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth. Exploration and adaptation. Okay. All right. So I know kind of where to pick up. All right. So we were working in the workbook here, and we're talking about our different yes, the different painting growth cycles. And so exploration and adaptation, that's getting into those areas. If I can't remember what I mentioned, before it cut off, but those are the areas where we're getting into coming into our own sort of voice a little bit. Just figuring out we've done all the copying and emulating, and now we're sort of showing up with the type of work that we want to do, the type of paintings that are naturally wanting to come out of us, and then that just keeps getting better. So the next one, experimentation and expression, and if you notice, I've got continuing education written out there. That's when you're really, really kind of owning your process. You're really showing up every day. You're really knowing the type of work that you have. You've developed a signature style typically at that point, but you're continuing to educate yourself. You're continuing to learn. You're continuing to you're continuing to seek out those that are farther down the path than you, just like the apprenticeship sort of process works. You don't ever stop really giving up on learning more and gleaning from those that have something to offer. And then professionalism and or mentoring there at the bottom, that's definitely where you're sort of coming full circle. You're, with the apprentice model, now you're the one that is there sort of helping and teaching and guiding others into their artistic journey. I like to think of myself in that position, knowing that I'm surrounded by a great company of other artists who are still genuinely much more experienced than me, they're much older, they've been painting for many more years, all the different things. And I know that those artists are still out there, they're still doing what they do, and I want to make sure that I'm, gleaning from them, so I seek them out and still to this day, and I'm constantly looking out for other artists that I can work with so that I can learn and continue to grow in my own creative journey. Okay, so we've talked about these all of these different stages or cycles, and the amount of time that you spend in each one of those sort of cycles or one of those layers is directly linked to how much time you spend painting. Okay, and so if you're only painting maybe once every 6 months, well, it's going to take a long time for you to get out of that, we'll just say the copying and emulating phase. It's going to take a long time for you to get out of that and into discovering what your potential is all about if you're not painting that often. Okay, so just like with athletes and musicians and everything, we got to work on all of these phases. Visual artists have got work to do as well, and know that it's good and it's okay. There's not something wrong with you because you didn't open up that art material set on Christmas morning and suddenly make, some kind of masterpiece. That doesn't mean that something was wrong with you, that you're normal. Okay. It's a process of time that we go through. So we have got to make painting time, a priority. And that's what we were talking about in our schedule. And tomorrow's day 4. We're doing our roadmap. We're really mapping that out. You've got to really own that time, honor that time, take care of that time, protect it, all those things. And I want you to know that making a painting is not the only way that you can, that's not the only type of painting time. Okay, so I've got 3 right here. Learning, like the first one, learning to paint qualifies as painting time. That's like, if you've got the tendency to think that you should just really be at a certain level already, know this, that learning to paint is still considered painting time. Okay, making masterpieces is not the only painting time. Okay, so learning to paint, okay, that involves receiving instruction on a regular basis. Okay, whether it's from me or from the YouTube or the internet or the interwebs or your local art center or wherever it is, find someone that has what you are looking for so that you can learn it. You should not be having to learn these things on your own. You're reinventing the wheel. Don't do that. You're spending all of your time, if you're trying to teach yourself how to paint, that's kind of like, I don't know, a dancer teaching themselves, a ballerina teaching herself how to be a ballerina. It really doesn't work out quite like you think it will. So receiving instruction on a regular basis, showing up regularly to paint according to your schedule, okay, that we're going to make tomorrow. And then, taking workshops, finding people, online or in person, whatever it is. Always be learning, always be willing to learn from someone, because your own thoughts about the thing that you want but don't know how to do, you can only get so far by just your own sort of plugging away. Okay, don't be sort of, I don't know, we kind of get this idea, I'll figure it out, it'll be fine. But think about it. Would a musician ever say, and I mean, there are a lot of self-taught musicians, I'm not saying that, so there's some people that are just really talented in that way, but for the most part, if you want to really be a good musician, you got to start out taking piano lessons, and you build and build and build. It's a process. Number 2, preparing to paint qualifies as painting time. I love this. Okay. Prepping your paper, getting it taped down for the next session, organizing your work, your supplies, cleaning your space, all of those things are included in painting time. That is part of painting time. Okay. The third one, experimenting qualifies as painting time. Okay. Learn and develop new techniques and strategies for painting on your own. Expand on concepts, especially when it's something that you like. Okay. So experimenting, and another word for that is playing. Okay. Playing is part of painting time. Okay. And so think about this. When you set up your schedule for painting time, okay, we'll talk more about this later, but here's just real quick. It's so good once you start to see it coming together on a schedule. Okay, if you've got 3 days a week, let's say that you're going to paint, one of those days could be spent just cleaning your space, washing your brushes, cleaning your palettes, getting things organized, laying out your colors, washing your water containers, getting the mushrooms out of your water buckets, taping your paper down so that it's all ready to go, and you've just got to walk in there and there it is. That's part of painting time. Just like prepping food for a meal, when you get the roast out of the freezer that morning, that was part of preparing the meal, right? When you dice the onions or whatever, that's part of that's part of making the meal. Cleaning up all the dishes at the end, that's part of making the meal. Okay, there's all these things. So I want you to really start thinking about what painting is in a different way. It's all the things on the front end, the back end, in the middle, top and bottom, and then all of course all those underlying things with the mental mindsets and the way that you're handling your physical space and time. All of those things work together to do painting. It's not just picking up a brush. Okay, it's all of these things. Okay, so we talked about, let's flip in the page here, the speed and quality of your painting growth cycles rely heavily on the quality of your pigments, paper, and brushes. Okay, I cannot emphasize this enough. Now, I understand that when you're very first trying out something, you're not going to go and buy the the $200 paintbrush. I get that, and that's fine. There are paths up, starting at the bottom and working your way up. But poor materials are the greatest form of self-sabotage. So, many of us that are here, the likelihood is, we might not be, independently wealthy, billionaires or anything like that, but we should be probably most likely at a point in our lives where we can afford to go to Michael's with a 40% off coupon and just buy the Arches paper. Okay, just buy the Arches paper. Okay, this is what I use pretty much all the time. There are other papers that I experiment with, but this is what I use. And even if you have lesser paints, if you will use the good paper can it can erase sins that exist with poor quality paints. It's pretty amazing. Okay, so make sure you're getting good paper as a start, and then don't worry about so much with buying every color in the store. Just get a few. You just need 5 or 6 colors to get started, but buy the good quality, because that way you're developing good habits and good skills. If you're using lousy materials, you are developing so many poor habits that you're going to have to unlearn when you finally get ready to just buy the thing. And I hear it over and over again with students. It's like, they finally buy that Arches paper and they're like, why did I wait so long? It's like, I cannot believe that I just struggled all these months. It happens. Okay, but just go ahead and jump in there. All right, so let's look at 2 primary techniques in developing a relationship with pigment. Okay, I'm isolating pigment tonight because we're going to paint, and I want you to think about this whole new idea of developing a relationship with your materials. Now, I know that we all love going into the store and we have that, kid in a candy store thing. We love looking at everything, but a lot of times I think that doesn't always translate into loving the actual sitting down and getting busy and getting to work using the materials to see exactly what they're going to do. And I have found over time, if I will spend a lot of time with just one color at a time and really get to know that color, because a color is not just a color by itself. It is a color. We look at it and we see what color it is, but when we're painting with it, we start to learn, especially with watercolor, that it has behaviors. It has a personality. It has characteristics. It has, it has all of these other attributes that are not necessarily picked up on with just a plain color swatch. Okay, so the interactive color swatch is what I'm going to, something I have, I've just coined that phrase, and other people do this. I've not like invented this technique, but this is something that I do routinely with colors, and I'm going to show you how to go through this. I want you to do this with every color you've got in your palette, okay? And what this does, the interactive color swatch will teach you how a pigment behaves, okay? And that's really what's important about our pigments, because when we're working with them, if you've bought a brand new pigment and you kind of did a color swatch with it, which is sort of that typical making a little square of color, but then you start plopping it into your painting and you're like, oh, okay, it's doing things I wasn't expecting. Okay, well, this is a good way to work on learning how the pigments interact. Okay, all right, I'm going to switch things over to my work area right quick so that you can see what I've got going on here. Let's see, did I do that right? No, I didn't. Hold on. Okay, let me try 3 times and see if it'll do it. There we go. All right. Okay, so I want you to be able to see my work area and still see me talking to you as well. So I have got, this is a pretty standard sort of color chart. In fact, this is one of my Daniel Smith the little color dots that you can get, which are fantastic, by the way. They're worth the money. They are, because you can actually do a very small interactive color swatch with these. That's not what you're seeing here, but there is enough pigment that you could actually do a small one, and it really lets you test the colors. All right, so, we've all done this. We've gotten our pigment on the paper, we wet it, we kind of squish it around a little bit, and we're like, oh, okay, all right, well, that's what that color looks like. We've all done this. And you might even get fancy and like let the color start out real intense and then kind of fade out to a lighter version, so that you can kind of see how it looks when it's lighter. And those are good. Those are great techniques, okay? But you can take it a lot farther. I want to show you an example just on this Daniel Smith card. I'm going to see if I can hold this up to you. Okay, all right. A favorite color that I have of Daniel Smith is Green Apatite Genuine. I've got my finger on it. I'm going to hold it up just so that you can see. Okay, do you see Green Apatite Genuine right there? All right, so I just wet the little bead, kind of moved the pigment around, and it's like, yeah, it's sort of this earthy kind of sap green or olive green kind of tone. And and you're thinking, okay, that would be great for to use in a landscape or whatever. But I want to show you something. Green Apatite Genuine also looks like this. Look at everything that's on this card. Okay, so you can see that everything that, there's not a whole lot to look at right here in this little thing, but when I do an interactive color swatch, look at everything that I can do with Green Apatite Genuine. I really push the color in a lot of different directions to see what it's going to do, how it's going to behave, what's possible, what will it look like if I do this, that, or the other. And then I've got a little card here that I just keep in my little color library, if you want to call it that, and it lets me refer to those. And then, of course, the more I use this color, the more I can anticipate and encourage these sort of behaviors and characteristics in the pigment, okay? So an interactive color swatch is like primo. It is really the best way to test a color to see what it's going to do. I'm going to walk us through doing one, and I would love it if you would probably watch me do one first before you jump in. And because I will give you time to do it as well. It doesn't take long, but watch me go through it just so that you can kind of see sort of how it's done. But do you see the dramatic difference? I mean, oh my gosh, I had no idea. It was once upon a time I had no idea that you should probably try to do things like this to see how far your color would go, because it's pretty amazing. And in fact, I have a whole stack of cards here. So these are all interactive color swatches that I have done. Look at that one. Isn't that one beautiful? Look at that. Oh my gosh. There's yellow, gray, blue, and green all inside that one color. I didn't know. Now this is alizarin crimson. It's just, I've got a lot of value changes and a lot of behaviors in the way that it reacts with salt and water and different things like that. So depending on your pigment, I use a lot of Daniel Smith because they granulate, and I really like that for my visual textures and the work that I do. But a lot of the pigments, they'll separate, and you'll get other sort of things happening that maybe you weren't expecting. But look at all the granulation in this one. See, that I really wouldn't have known if I would just have done, I think, what is this one? Is this one Opera? This is Opera Pink. Oh shoot, I don't have Opera Pink on this one, on this chart. But if you just do just a swatch, just a little square of Opera Pink, you just get sort of a pink square. But if you look, Opera Pink will do all kinds of beautiful granulaty kind of things, okay, that are just awesome. And so you can see I do this with all of my colors, and I just keep them. Of course, I name them so that I don't forget what's going on. This is actually an interesting one. I'm going to be using this one later. This is called Lunar, oops, let me get it unblurry here, Lunar Black. Now this will make, if I want to, it'll make just a solid black square. I mean, just like pitch black, or I can kind of dilute it and play with it and add salt and some different things, and I get a lot of real super heavy granulation. Love this pigment, but I wouldn't have known that had I not spent some time doing an interactive color swatch. Okay, so we'll quit looking at the interactive color swatches, and now we'll make one. I'm actually going to make one tonight with a color that I'm trying it out for the first time. So you're going to see me actually do an interactive color swatch with this one from the very get-go. And like I said, watch me go through this one and then do one. We'll have time to do it right here. Let me get kind of situated. Can you see my little board here? Let's do this. I'm going to move this over even more. I want to zoom in even more if I can here. I'll have to get this by itself. Zoom in. Oh, whoopsie, maybe not that much. Okay, I'm gonna have to scooch my board a little bit. All right, and I'm gonna put this right here so that just so you can see. Now this and this and this. Okay. All right, so I'm just using a number 12 round brush, and the pigment that I'm going to be working with, this is a Daniel Smith color. I just have bought this. It's Imperial Purple, and I am really interested in using it because it granulates. It's a purple that will granulate, and it's kind of, in fact, let me just, yeah, it's quinacridone red, with ultramarine blue, and I'm like, oh, I mean, how can you go wrong? Okay, so I'm gonna squeeze some of this out just onto my palette here so that I can play. All right, so just a little. I don't even have this one integrated into my painting palette. This is my teaching palette, actually, that I'm using right here. Those of you that are my painting members, you will recognize the palette. All right, so I'm gonna get some water here. And the little swatch that I do, it doesn't matter what size you do. This is like a little 4x5. You can do it however big you want. You know, I've even done 2 of them together, like on one sheet of paper. You know, it doesn't matter. You just do it how you want to do it. All right, but this is how I kind of get started with it. I do start with fresh pigment because I right out of the tube, because I really want to work with it like that. Right out of the gate. So I'm just starting by actually just wetting my paper up at the top, and this is one of the first things that I check for is dispersion. Just, you know, how much the color likes to race and run once it makes contact, you know, with the paper. So I'm just wetting this, and I want to get a nice juicy puddle here. So got a lot of pigment here. And I can tell that this is a lot different already than my, I usually have like a Winsor Violet on my palette most of the time. I really like that. It's pretty much the same thing as a dioxazine purple or dioxazine violet. But this is a little bit different. It gives me that rich, grapey purple, but because it's got that ultramarine blue in there, I know it's going to granulate, and I can't wait to see what it's going to do. All right, so on dry paper right below that, I'm going to just lay the color in and then work my way up slowly right to where I had gotten the paper wet, and make contact with it and then stop. I don't want to work it. I just want to stop, and then I'm just going to wait and watch and just see what happens. Okay. With watercolor especially, that's one of those things that can get hard to do, is we like to kind of just keep working it and just, you know, like we're scrubbing grout tile or something, and just resist that urge. Okay, watercolor paints itself, you know, 80% of the time, 90% of the time, and so if we will just like, just back off and let it do its thing, we will see magical things. All right, I'm going to come down with a little bit more of just the pigment. I'm already seeing some really, really beautiful things here. Now what I'm doing right now, I'm just clearing my brush. I added a little bit more of that pigment to the middle. This time I'm actually adding some clear water at the bottom to come up and meet the color that I have laid in place. Just giving it a time to just sort of connect. If you've painted long enough with watercolor, you will know that if you have a wet area and you bring pigment to that wet area, there's a certain behavior. If you have pigment that's on the paper and you bring water to the pigment, it behaves. Even though it's pigment and water meeting, it depends on which one was there first. Okay, so think about it. It's kind of like there's a party going on, and if the pigment was already there and water shows up, a whole different dynamic happens at the party. Okay, if water was there first and then pigment shows up, it's something totally different. It's physical science. I mean, there's some some things going on with that, but that's kind of what's going on. I do have some salt because I do actually use a pretty good bit of salt in my painting. So this is just table salt. So I'm just I just put some out on my hand so I can kind of control it a little bit. So just a few little grains, and I'm just putting it right here across that sort of that middle area, just because I really want to know what this pigment, that's a nice heavy medium tone. I want to see how it's going to behave with salt. I just want to know what's going to happen there. All right, I'm going to clear out my brush. I want to come back in now. This is just a wet brush, and I'm going to actually do some little droplets of water just onto this. This is me adding some water to an area that's not quite dry after the fact, just to see how it might behave. And then down here at the bottom where I've got this sort of wet area, I'm just putting in a little bit of the color because I kind of want to see what's the thinnest, what does it look like when it's really nearly transparent, kind of giving it some room to do that. And then one of the last things I'll do, I use a little dagger brush. Quite often my members will recognize this. This is my my Princeton dagger, my 1/4 inch dagger, or sometimes I might use the liner brush, but I really like to see a couple of things here. I'm going to load up I'm loading up the dagger brush with some of this pigment that's left over. In fact, yeah, there we go. All right, so pretty wet. I want to just kind of create a few lines through my little card here just to see what it's going to do, because I'm often making line work like that in my paintings for grasses or limbs or whatever the case might be. So it kind of gives me an idea, just a little idea of how that's sort of going to behave. This time I'm swishing out my dagger brush so that I just have clear water only, and I might make a few passes just with clear water just to see what it's going to do. All right, so already I can see a lot of things have happened here. I'm going to hold this up so that you can see it a little bit better. All right, now this, this is wet, but look at all of that pink that just sort of escaped out of that big field of purple as I let it sit, just so that I could see what it was going to do. I still have hold on, let me see if I can make an adjustment, because my screen is not showing me. There's a bunch of pink here, and then when I'm holding it up, you cannot see the pink, and that's crazy. Let me see if I can adjust that right quick. Maybe that helped just a little bit. I'm going to lock it in there. You can see this pink. There's a pink edge around everything, and in fact there's a bunch of pink water pooling up here at the bottom of the card. I've put salt in here. It's having an effect. I can see it, but it needs to sit. But look at all this pink that has sort of risen out of it, and the little blooms, they're sort of doing their thing. And so what I'm going to do with this is I'm actually going to just kind of let it sit. I want it to dry by itself, because that's sort of the true test. If I blow dry it with a hairdryer, I'm not gonna really know exactly what the results were, what happened. Okay, so work on one of these right quick. So I'll kind of just keep talking to you about it while you're working on it. And if you have questions, if things are coming up or unexpected results or whatever, let me know what you're seeing. I'm going to let this one sit for a minute. This is really good for, oh yeah, Pam says it's, Pam, yes, and Pam, I know you've made several of these. You're one of my members, and I know you love this technique. They are great for taking in your bag. You know, dot cards and a water brush. You can put it all together. It totally works out really well. Let's see, I love this one. Christy Jacobson says, I can do swatches for hours, so fun and helpful for reference. Yes, and do you know that making interactive color swatches is part of your painting time? You are developing a relationship with your pigment, and you can imagine doing this and like doing several of these, you know, because sometimes I might alter the concentration of the pigment. Sometimes I might have a super dark, deep, intense version of maybe this purple and start with that and do a card, and then I'll do a second card where I have maybe thinned the purple down just a little bit, so I'm sort of working with a medium tone, and then I could do a third one that was all very light tones. And so I'd have 3 interactive swatch cards just on one color that give me just a myriad of possibilities, okay? And one of the things that I love to do, in fact, I'll just kind of go overhead here, you know, as I'm sitting and watching this one start to dry, look at that top section. Does that not look like maybe just a distant field and backlit sunny tips of grasses coming up, you know, out of a dark field that's partially in shadow, you know, something like that. As you're, especially as a landscape painter, as you're watching your sample cards sort of come together, you start seeing, oh my gosh, that would be so perfect. That's a perfect way to make a flower head with just that one droplet of water, or you know, the grasses, the edges of a field, or you know, whatever the case may be. Let's see. Does anybody? Oh, this is a good question. Kathy says, do you get different results using fresh paint versus palette paint? It's a good question, and not really, as long as you really re-wet that palette paint. I just want it to be super wet so that I know exactly how it behaves right out of the tube. And then when I do keep my paints on my palette, I allow them to dry, but I will use a spritz bottle to go back over those, 5 to 10 minutes before I'm going to paint. I will re-wet everything, let all of that water sort of soak in and reactivate and get that paint all nice and creamy again. Okay, so it's just a shortcut to making sure that the pigment is nice and soft. Let's see. Oh, this is nice. Elizabeth says, I found a photo album that holds 4x6, so I'm working on getting all my swatches to that size so I can store them. Excellent. In fact, that's a fantastic idea, Elizabeth. I've got mine all just in a big, kind of a big wad, and they go in a gallon Ziploc bag. But I really like the idea of the photo album. I think that's fantastic. Okay, so let me kind of ask you right now, if you're working on one of these color swatches right now, you should probably have kind of wrapped it up at this point. Let me know. I'm kind of thinking that I want us to go on, and especially with our delay that we had in switching streams, I want to make sure that we have all the time that we need to, to take care of our little cottage painting tonight too. I'll just wait for a second and just make sure that I don't have anybody. I don't want to leave anybody behind. Does anybody have a question about the process of making the interactive color swatch? And while I'm waiting on anybody to comment, know that, do these any way that you want. If you know that you're a wet-on-wet painter and that's pretty much exclusively what you do, then create little scenarios of wet-on-wet on your interactive card. Okay, do the things that you know are typically what you think you might want to do, but if you're not really certain, that's why I like the idea of having just a really broad variety. I have like some, wet on wet, some dry, some salt effect. I kind of mix it up a little bit. I want to know a lot about what is possible with this, with this color. And I love this. I'm going to show you this on my palette. You can see the quinacridone red and the ultramarine blue as they are separating on the palette. You can see the two colors. You can see them in there, and that's a telltale sign. You know, anytime that you get that separation like that, that's a telltale sign that the pigment is going to granulate and give you some nice, interesting, you know, sort of textures. I'm kind of actually playing a little bit. I'll come back over here to my board. I just saw, you know, these little strands kind of look like little flowers, and I thought, what if I just took a few little drops of this purple and kind of put it up there just to play, just to see. I don't know. All right, I'm not going to mess with it too much. I just wanted to kind of play. All right, so that's going to be left to completely dry, and then we'll revisit it at the end. Okay, I don't want to put the hair dryer on that because I want it to just dry on its own. That lets me see all of the possible effects that it will do. Yeah, oh, okay, yeah, Elizabeth was saying that color order, yes, yeah, putting them in order, and I think Shelley had mentioned it first, and sorting the cards by order. And yeah, that's a really good one, especially, you know, I typically arrange my palette colors from warm to cool, and so whatever palette you have, it might be nice to have the cards in the order of your palette, just so that they're always there as a reference, you know. And don't be afraid to make several of the same color, because, you know, the possibilities are kind of endless, really. All right. So let's move into the next exercise that I have for us tonight, and that is a monochromatic painting. All right, so what's the point of a monochromatic painting? You know, we've got this, we've got this beautiful little cottage scene that we're going to work with tonight, and I on purpose, you know, made it black and white. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to use black. You can use sepia, you can use dark blue, any color that you want, just so that it's a dark color, okay, for this particular one. So a monochromatic painting, the purpose of doing that is that it allows you to figure out the total value range of a particular pigment, okay. Now, you could do this with, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a light color, maybe like raw umber, okay? You could try to do this painting in just raw umber, and so the darkest darks of the painting are going to be the full strength of that raw umber, which is really not quite a dark value, but it'll become the darkest value of your monochromatic painting, and then it'll be up to you to get lighter, to have some medium tones, and then get much, much lighter to get very light tones, you know, that type of thing. It gives you a chance to find what the value range of a particular color is, and it also challenges you to work on your water balance so that you're achieving all of those different values, okay? All right, so let's jump into this. Let's see, actually, right quick, yes. Okay, we're going to go straight to the painting. Let's see. Evelyn has a question. Jill, have you also made made swatch cards of color mixes of two colors and explored? I don't typically do that, Evelyn. It's a great question, and doesn't mean that you shouldn't. You absolutely could, and in fact, if you've got color combinations that you know are your go-to combinations that you use routinely, absolutely explore with those. It's a fantastic idea if you know that you've got some of those that you want to do. The key would be to make sure that that you can repeat that mixture. That becomes the issue if you're mixing a custom color to do your swatch. Make sure that you've got a pretty good idea of how you achieved that color. Was it one part and one part, or was it two parts of one color and one part of another color? You know, kind of gauge that just so that you know it's repeatable. That's the thing. But yes, definitely a good idea. Okay, all right, so I think this is what we're going to do. I'm not hearing any questions or anything about the interactive color swatch at this point, so I think what we'll do is move on to our cottage painting. Okay, I've got some clear, make sure you got some fresh clear water, because all mine's purple now. I'm sure yours is whatever it is, and so I'm just cleaning everything out here as best I can. All right, so I am going to get this is how I'm going to do this. this and then this. How about that? All right, so let me try to scooch this up just a little bit. And I am using Lunar Black. Okay, I am just going to go ahead, just for the simplicity, to simplify the whole demonstration. I thought I'll just go ahead and use black as a color, but I didn't want to just use a plain black like Mars Black or Lamp Black. I wanted to use Lunar Black because I've got it in my kit, and it's also, I know it's going to granulate, and I love, look at the photo up close. Look at all those trees. You see all of the foliage texture. Granulation can just take care of all of that without me having to paint anything. The pigment itself can just take care of that. All right, so let's get into this. All right, so I am going to do just a brief little sketch. And oopsie, let me get my actual, I don't even have the photo to look at. Whoopsie. Hold on just a second. Hopefully this will give you some time to get your stuff ready. Wherever you may be in this stage. Okay, all right, I've got my picture up now so that I can see what I'm doing. All right, so I'm just using a real inexpensive technical pencil. If you're one of my members, you've seen me do this. You see me do this every week, but I like using this because it is inexpensive, but it gives me a nice graphite line work, for my an underdrawing for my painting, but it doesn't smear so much like a drawing pencil. So I kind of like that aspect of it. So I'm going to actually maybe tilt my board just a little bit so that I don't get, so that I can see what I'm doing here. I'm going to probably, just for the sake of time, I'm going to omit the little fence that's out front, and I might actually rearrange the composition just a little bit. So I'm going to start by just sketching out the little roof here, and trying to keep this as simple as I can. I don't want to turn this into too much, but I just love this little cottage, and you can see it's a little wonky. It's been added onto at some point in time or some such, and so it's got extra different little things happening to it, and I love the little chimneys. So I'm just doing a quick little sketch here. If you're, painting with me on a weekly basis, we go through these all the time, and just try to work on, what's the most important thing here. And that's why I'm omitting sort of that fence in the front, because I just kind of don't want to get into it. And I'm kind of shortening the chimney just a little bit, and I don't want to make a big I don't want to overdo anything. I just want this to be kind of simple. So it did take me a minute of concentration to just sort of focus on getting that little cottage shape in here. So don't feel like you've got to rush. And if you're watching this live, feel free to just watch and do the painting later. It is totally okay. It's still, in fact, you'll probably be gaining something by just kind of watching and seeing where this goes. And then there's like a little landscape that sort of comes down, wraps around. There's a little bushy bush something here, and then it kind of goes over here. Two cute little windows that are here. And then some kind of, I guess this is a window. All right, so I'm just really sketching pretty quickly here. So, and I am aware of the fact that I have kind of changed the shape of the building just a little bit, and that's artist prerogative. Know that you can always do that. It's like, it's a really long and skinny building, but I wanted to see a lot of it here, in the, up close, but at the same time, I don't want to be burdened with, getting it totally, absolutely perfect. I'm coming through here. I'm just using my pencil to kind of give myself just a little bit of an outline of what these little tree shapes are doing back here. And then there's this one tree that's sort of, I know in the photograph there's a big tree that comes up here. That's not going to serve this current composition very well, so I think I'll just let that tree be omitted, but there'll still be plenty of trees in the background. And then maybe there's a little deviation in the yard, and now I've got just a little scene here. Okay, all right, so if you have taken time to sketch this beforehand, that is totally fine as well. All right, so some considerations that I want to make while I'm working on this painting. If you notice in the photo, I'm going to get into a full-blown painting session here. I've got some value issues here. If I look, you know, the building, the walls of the building and the sky are white, and then I have some really darks in terms of the shadows. If I'm looking at the shadows like right under the roof line and under the eave, and then all the little windows, really dark shadows there. And then pretty much everything else is sort of a medium value. And so there's not a lot of value shift happening. And the photo can kind of get away with that, but when we're working on our painting, I want to create more of a sense of depth. And so things that are farther away, I really want to push those into the background so that they're softer. You know, we can tell in this, looking at this photo, that those trees are, they're back there a pretty good way. They're not just right against the house, but if I painted them that dark, they would look like they were like growing right out of the top of the house if I paint it that way. So let's make some value adjustments, and we'll do it this way. All right, so let me get back to this scenario. So what I'm going to do, the sky and the building itself, the walls of the building are white, and I'm just going to leave them like that. This little, all these little trees and whatnot that are back here, I'm just giving this a little bit of a coat of water and protecting the building, just wetting these tree shapes back here. And then this is my, trying to get both in here. Okay, all right, so here's my lunar black. I just want a soft, this is black pigment, so I really want to keep this soft. And so I'm just going to kind of drop it in here, almost, giving it just a little bit of a gray tone. And I'm going nowhere as dark as what I'm seeing in the photo. Nothing that dark for these background shapes, because I want them to stay, in the background. And I'm just not going as dark. I'm keeping some of the relationships the same. And what I mean by that is, the roof, it's not as dark as back here, but I don't want these trees back here to get quite that dark. That's just a little too much. All right, so just kind of scrubbing that around. Now as things get a little bit closer and lower, I can get a little bit darker. These are some of these little bushes that are a little bit closer to us. Those can get a little bit darker because they're closer. And then you remember when we were doing our little interactive color swatch, one of the things that I can do, if I just get wet water on my building and just make it damp right there at the bottom, and then I come back with some of my pigment and then just let that dry, just barely touch, then I start getting sort of a little bit of bleed coming through, and that kind of allows that to start going up into the edge of the building, and almost looks like the grasses that are growing in that area. A little bit more. I want to kind of be, you know, this is, I can get really dark with this, but I want to be careful and mindful. And I'm using kind of a dry brush technique to handle some of these textures. And already I can see lots of granulation happening because of this lunar black. We skipped the fence. I just for the sake of time, I don't want to get into all of that. I could even come in here and put a little bit of salt right in the foreground. Let that kind of sit and become something magical in a minute. All right, let me turn my attention back up to the house just a little bit, or excuse me, back up to the trees just a little bit. Scooch that just a little bit more. Okay, you can see how my values, I'm not getting near as dark as what is seen in the photo in a lot of these places. I'm just wanting to keep, you know, the sides of the house, you know, they do stand out. A few little textures in there. Just going to kind of let those do what they want to. I'll hold this up closer to the camera shortly just so that you can see just lots of beautiful textures are forming because of the pigment that I've chosen. This wasn't just neutral tint, although I do use that for some things. It's really, really beautiful to watch all these textures form. All right, I'm going to switch over. I did all of that with my number 12 brush. Now my number 12 does it'll come to a nice point. Okay, so if you need to, you know, drop down a size for what you're doing, that's fine too. All right, so what I think I want to do now is just a little bit of work on the house itself. Everything's pretty wet here, so I want to kind of just maybe work away from that just a little bit. There is a slight tint of gray that I'm seeing in this side of the house. So just kind of want to get that in there. Very, very light. You can see I've not used the darkest version of this color at all. Not yet. Same thing with the roof. I'm going to show you a little trick here. I like to load up my brush with some pigment, but I want to do a dry brush kind of stroke. So I'm taking my brush and actually right at the ferrule, I'll kind of press it against a paper towel, and that sort of takes the moisture out, but I still have some pigment in here so that I can start to work against that roof with a little bit of a dry texture in my brush here. So it almost starts to look like a pencil drawing, almost. And again, whatever color you have chosen, whether it's a dark blue or whatever the case may be, just make sure that you are taking care of protecting those values and getting the middle tones, getting the dark tones. We're working pretty much with everything that's a medium tone right now. I'm starting to add a few little darks here and there and all the other wheres. And I just need to kind of keep looking at my photo reference. Okay, and then I think what I'll do here, we hadn't really talked about it, but it's a little bit too wet for me to continue putting some of these really darker values in here. So I'm just going to mute the sound right quick, and I'm just going to give this a quick little blow dry. So hold on just a second. And keep painting if you're working. Okay, all right, so I got that dry as I want that. So I'm getting back into my pigment here, and now I can really start to press and push some of these values. I feel pretty good about these really light values. I've got a lot of light tone and a lot of mid tone. You can see it's nowhere near as dark as the photo. I don't have to push the values that hard. But then when I do get into, the underside of the roof here, where the windows and the shadows are underneath the eaves and whatnot, I definitely need to push that value a little bit more. And so I just want to do this quickly, and I want it to look fresh and not overworked and all of that stuff. Just looking for all of those little places to get that dark value in there. Really dark inside the little windows there. And then these look completely black, nearly. All right, right across there. All right, and then there's just some little medium tones that are happening. I'm going to get that mixed out. Get a little bit of a puddle of this black, happening out here so that it's a little bit lighter. And then I can start, there's not really, the light is coming from straight down, obviously. Kind of, well, coming down and also coming from this angle. So it's sort of coming down from here, in which case the shady side of these chimneys should be here based on that information, even though it's not really showing us that much in the photo. And then I'm going to come back in here and then get outside. The trees are a little bit darker than the building. So I'm just coming to the outside of this. So if you've noticed, I've not had to think not one time about mixing any color or matching a color or getting the greens just right. All I'm focusing on is value. That's it. Just value. And when I keep coming around and making sure that I'm chasing the values, make sure that they're where they need to be. In other words, the roof is lighter than what's back here in the photo, and that's going to help ensure that I've achieved the form, because color is really secondary to value. That's why black and white photos work. We can see we can see totally 100% what we're looking at and what we're working with, because value tells the story of form, not color. All right, so what I'm doing here, I'm just making sure that I've got a nice sort of wrap of this darker value sort of happening outside my roof line a little bit here. And then I still want to keep these trees nice and soft, so I'm just using a little bit of a wet brush to just kind of blend and play a little bit, make some little textures of these little pretend trees, whatever they are. There we go. And then I start to see my little cottage. Okay, the form just starts to happen, and that's one of the beautiful exercises of playing with value, because that's where all of our shapes are determined. And not only are we getting to practice, working with value and creating form, We're actually getting to work with an individual color and develop a relationship with it, knowing what it will be able to do for us anytime we pick up the brush. We're comfortable with this color because we know exactly what it's going to do for us. Let's see, I think I might want to add, there's a little bit of value kind of happening on this little thing here. And this little whatever, it's the end of the roof line, but it's dark too. It's not just its shadow, but that whole, whoopsie, I didn't mean to go there, but I did. There we go. I'll just let that run into the background, just keeping that soft. And I might even add a little bit more water here and encourage some of that to run right down in there. All right, I think I'm going to stop there. You get the idea here. I'm going to, I will go ahead and dry, oh, I can't forget this. This precious little bush that's right here. I didn't mean to forget you. There we go. Now you're there. All right, so notice how I'm not trying to overwork any particular area. I want to keep these soft and shadowy, but at the same time, you know, they're accurately placed, you know, relatively. I mean, I didn't draw this super realistically, but making sure that all of these little values show up. And look, there's a lot more depth in, you know, our painting, you know, when we try to just sort of maintain these value changes like this, keeping those trees back here so much lighter. Just look how they're way out there behind the building instead of up too close. And then I'm going to do my little trick where I drink some of the water out of the brush, but I still have pigment to do some little whatevers. I want to have some darker value up here in the front because it's closer and we can have that darker value. There we go. All right, let me dry what we've got. Okay, all right, so we are dry on that and dry on the little interactive color swatch too. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull the tape off on this. Let me hear from you. Let me hear how things went with you for this assignment. If you were just watching this time, that is totally fine. But whatever it is that you've done and that you came up with, I want you to feel free to share these in the Facebook group so that I'd love to give you some feedback, and then also it's just really nice for everybody to kind of encourage one another and share, and so that we can see what all was accomplished this evening, because we did a lot. We went over our hour, and that kind of happens when you're painting and your live stream decides to go a little AWOL there. But let's take a look at the little cottage. And I love all these textures. Let me move the photo out of the way. I want you to see, look at the textures that the lunar black gave me in the trees. I didn't even have to paint that. I just put the color in, and then I didn't work it like I was polishing tile grout. I just let the pigment sit and behave and accomplish its goal and do the things that I know it's capable of, because I have, because I have spent enough time working, with those interactive color swatches to know what they're going to do. And then, of course, I've spent a lot of time painting too. So every time you're working on honing these abilities, honing your skills, honing your craft, working with your materials, it's a constant process. There's lots of things going on, a lot of moving parts, but they all come together. And it's very important for us to schedule it out, which we're going to do tomorrow. But I hope that you enjoyed this. I love, let me show you this one right quick too. I'm hopeful, let's see. I'm hopeful, oh, if I can, oh yeah, look at the salt effects. Look at all those pinks. Look at, this is one color, okay? And in fact, let's see. Yes, okay, Imperial Purple is on this list. Now, if I just went with that and thought, okay, that's Imperial Purple, I guess that's all there is, nothing else to see here. But there's so much more to see. Look what Imperial Purple will do. Okay, there's where I dropped some water on it. Look how those instantly look like little sunflower heads. Oh my gosh, I could just make a field of those. And in fact, I'll take some of this paint that's still on my palette here and just, I just painted little stems, and instantly they're like little flowers. Okay, so there's so many different things that you can do and see when you're working through these. There's all that pink that kind of comes out of the color when you're working with it. Fantastic way to work with these. I hope that this helps you and that you're excited about trying these things. I want you to make an interactive color swatch with all the colors that you have, or at least the ones that you're really excited about. Okay, do that with everything that you've got in your palette. And I will tell you, the better quality pigment you have, the more dynamic, the richer color, the more exciting behaviors you can expect to find, just because you're using a quality pigment. Okay, so bear that in mind as you go through. Do I have any questions at this point? I do want us to wrap up, because I know that I've kept you for a pretty long time. Let's see. I don't think I see another question. Beautiful painting. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Lovely. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining me. We'll go ahead and wrap up for tonight. Join me. You want to be sure to join me tomorrow. Okay, we're going into day 4, and we're going to get this roadmap together, and you're going to start putting together your game plan so that you know what you're going to be doing for the next 30 days to enhance and improve and expand your confidence with your painting process and your entire creative process, for that matter. So thank you so much. If you've got questions, post them in the group. Definitely share your work, and I will be talking to you very soon. Thanks, everybody, and good night.